Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This, of course, is another anime reaction video. Today, we are getting into some more Noragami. Now, in the last two episodes, we got into some really exciting and interesting things. Honestly, these have to have been two of my favorite episodes so far, especially episode 6. Just getting introduced to a new god by the name of Bishamon, who ties into the past of Yato that we've been learning about so far through, well, first of all, through Kofuku Ebisu, right? But then learning, of course, more about him now through Bishamon by not only adding some things like really strained relationships between Yato and other gods, but also sort of going back into what was being mentioned before when Ebisu was telling Hiyori about the fact that Yato actually killed a regalia. Actually, as it turns out, it wasn't like I thought, that being Nora being the murdered regalia. It turned out it was actually someone who was a regalia of Bishamon, rather, as it turns out. But what was really interesting was that one of Bishamon's current regalias, I believe his name was Kazuma, the one with the glasses, seemingly bowed his head to Yato while they were leaving, but I guess we won't know about that fully until we get into the rest of the series. That, along with what's going on in regards to the blight on the back of Yato's neck currently, that we might get a more immediate answer to in these upcoming episodes for this video. But who knows how long that's going to be for more answers in regards to Yato and Bishamon's relationship. So, without further ado, as always, unless you're new here, links in the description below will take you to the full-length uncut reaction, so go ahead and watch the reaction there, and then come back to YouTube for the discussion. That being said, let's get started with episode 7 of Noragami. Okay, so what I wanted to say earlier, but I just kind of got sidetracked and too focused on the actual episode to say out loud, is that there's this weird, like, I don't know what the right word for it is, but there's like this similarity between Yuki and Yato as characters, and that being, well, it's like two sides of the same coin type thing. If I had to put it into like a comparison, it would be kind of like, no, that doesn't fit. It's because on one hand you have Yato, who did bad things, but has at some point redeemed himself, or is at least trying to redeem himself, and sort of atone for it. I assume that's going to be a part of his character at some point in the future. But he did bad things, but now he's trying to live, a proper life, charging people so little, charging people 5 yen, which is like what is 5 yen in US dollars, to help me understand it. 5 yen to USD is like 5 cents. He's charging so little and doing so much, and he mentioned that in one of the early episodes. I forget which episode, but he cleaned the dude's bathroom, thoroughly cleaned the dude's bathroom for 5 cents and a can of beer, I think. He's doing all these things dirt cheap, so I think it's kind of clear at this point that he wants to do good to the world. He wants to help people instead of killing people, even if killing people is probably a more lucrative, deal, because as long as there's 2 people on this world, somebody's gonna want somebody else dead, So while you don't know the full story, that's kind of how I see it. And in Yuki, on the other hand, and I think because of the harsh experience, Yato has a hard time dealing with certain things, I'm sure. I mean, it hasn't been said explicitly yet, but I just kind of get that feeling from it. So I could completely understand why Yato is kind of having a hard time trying to sort of raise Yuki, in a sense, because he said reforge, but I'm going to use the word raise, because Yuki is very much a kid that doesn't know much, which is why he was hurt, but didn't really, as far as I know, fully understood why Hiyori was getting mad at him for attempting to steal the skateboard. And so what I think is happening is that Yato really wants Yuki to grow up right. At the same time, he has trouble, figuring out how to do that. Like, there would have been a really good way to explain it in words what he meant when he was talking about how there was nothing you could do about people who wanted to kill themselves or whatever because they're already possessed. There could have been a better way to do it, but either on purpose or just like because he doesn't know how to express himself better, I guess, he phrased it in a way that doesn't sound right, you know what I mean? And so he's trying to help Yuki not go down that sort of same path, I guess. It sounded better in my head. Because Yuki's sort of going down that path, as it was mentioned before, because of the whole, gods and their connection with their regalia, because of how they used to be humans and whatnot. It's kind of like, because Yato can experience, or Yato knows when Yuki is thinking of doing bad things or thinking indecent thoughts, which obviously extend to more than like the funny haha he think of sex, you know what I mean, joke. So, and the fact that it's like a physical pain, you could argue that Yato just wants the pain to not hurt him and that's it. But I'd argue it's also because he cares about him in the same way that in Bleach, Zangetsu wanted to help Ichigo, so Ichigo's not sad, because whenever Ichigo's sad, it rains in Ichigo's inner world, and even though it is partially just because he just doesn't want to be rained on, and it's partially because of that selfish reason he wants to help the other person, it's also from a genuine care of the person, because when you feel, or when Zangetsu sees the rain, he knows Ichigo's hurting, and that hurts him. It sucks to see someone you care about hurt. So the same thing with Yato. Not only does it hurt Yato physically when Yuki is thinking of indecent things, it also hurts him like on an emotional level, you know what I mean? Because he cares about Yuki, and he doesn't, because he knows Yuki is like hurting or will be hurt because of going down this path type thing, if that makes any sense. Didn't get too terribly many answers to some of the questions I've had throughout this series, but that's fine. Really, is just asking more questions. We got a little bit more about why Kazuma was being so respectful towards Yato last episode. We learned a bit more lore in regards to how regalia works and gods works. We know what Noras are now. I'm still waiting for Gami to be a name somewhere in the show. It's gotta be. I mean, you can't do that. You can't not. You know what I mean? But other than that, it's mostly seeming like set up for the rest of this season at the very least, if not some more of the series in the future. That's pretty much all I gotta say about this episode, so I'm gonna get started with the next episode, episode 8. Really, really good episode. I really like a lot of the visual symbolism and like, how do I put it? Like the parallels drawn between two different things, because it's done so well in this series so far, and it's genuinely really cool to see a lot of this, a lot of this kind of symbolism, because it's one of those things that make you think, and it's really cool that they worked that into it. You know what I mean? Like, I think the biggest one that I'm drawing from this now that I've gotten to this point, is I'm sort of seeing Yato and Yukine's relationship as like parent and child. I don't know how I didn't see that earlier, but not only is that idea that the things that the kids do that are bad directly affect, the parents, even though it's not as like direct or obvious as, say, with Yuki, wherever he thinks bad things or does bad things, Yato feels a very real, like, sharp physical pain in his body and is infected with blight. But at the end of the day, because of the way that kids act, it does reflect on parents. And I'm not saying that kids have to do everything their parents say, because it's not saying that excuse like, I birthed you so you'll do whatever I say type thing, because honestly, there can be some really shitty abusive parents, and I can recognize that. But it's one of those things that you just kind of have to understand, that just because you want to, because it feels like it's something you want to do, or it feels right because of something else that's happening in your life, like with in the case of Yukine, where he was just feeling like shitty in general for a lot of different reasons, and he wanted to feel better by doing these things, like, stealing and smashing all the windows because he was frustrated. In those situations, not only does it reflect badly on the parent, it's also just generally destructive, obviously destructive, and not healthy in any way to yourself as you are, type thing. And And I kind of and I really like the sort of themes that they're kind of going for in Yuki's story, because at the same on one hand I'm getting annoyed by Yukine's bullshit, you know, constantly like, and I get they do it for jokes sometimes, but sometimes some of the times when Yuki is seriously just like chatting all types of shit about Yato, when sure, Yato can be cold sometimes, but I think that's just because of who he is. He's trying to change, but he has a hard time. And I think if there were to be a point in the future where Yuki wants to kill somebody for whatever reason, and Yato would try to stop him, Yuki would probably throw that in his face, like, you killed people before in Regalia, so what's so different about me doing it? And it's one of those cases where Yato's like, yeah, I know what it feels like to kill somebody, and it's not good. I don't want you to go through that, and you should do as I say, not as I, did in the past, type thing. And but just like Yuki's story of it just feels like so well done, because that's a very real fear that a lot of kids have, and that being loneliness and not being able to connect with those around you, because you're in this big scary world, and especially when you're a teenager, when you're slowly transitioning into the adult world. A lot of transition into the adult world is just throwing a bunch of shit at you and saying, have fun, good luck, figure it out. And that's like, people talk about it a lot, but that's something that doesn't get taught very often unless you like take classes specifically for it, like how to pay taxes or things like that. A lot of adulthood is just sort of putting you, just saying, here you go, be an adult now. Why don't you have a job yet? Are you dating anybody? Where's my grandchildren? When are you getting married? Why aren't you making more money? Type thing. And so wanting to be who you are and still, be with friends, it's a very hard thing to do as you grow up, because different people go through that process in different ways. Some people accept it, some people reject it, some people are somewhere in the middle, and some people just refuse to keep moving forward in that sort of way. So it's really, while I do still get annoyed by some of the shit that Yuki's pulling in the name of, and I don't want to say it's necessarily all like attention based or whatever, because that's kind of like missing the point entirely, but it's just, I completely understand why he's doing it. I can't empathize I empathize with him because I didn't have that problem, because I did have friends and I wasn't bullied, and it was a relatively boring school career for me, which is probably the best I could ask for, right beneath having like a really exciting one, you know what I mean? But I can really sympathize with the struggle that he has, because having absolutely no one and being, the object of harassment for the enjoyment of others would really suck, especially when you know how that can affect other people. Because you always look at like dangerous situations, or like situations where people are going through hard times, and you usually think, well, couldn't be me, or something like along those lines. But what am I even saying? Again, great episode. I'm really excited to see what happens next. I think I get it. He put up the borderline because he's probably scared of the blight spreading to them, but I do hope they help Yato, because Yato's not perfect, but I do trust in Yato as a person. I think he's a good guy who wants to do good things, but his methods seem cold, and he doesn't seem to elaborate very often. It's kind of a weird situation, but jeez, I don't know. But that's pretty much all I had to say about this episode. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload in the future. That all being said, thank you very much for watching. Peace.